a highlight of a very serious health condition as well in diabetes. But coming back to the matric rewrite that has now been put on ice after that High Court judgment, we are in conversation with Noncedo Madubedube, who's the General Secretary of Equal Education. Noncedo, hope we have a better connection this time. Now, you were explaining, what part of the reasons why as Equal Education you concur with that judgment that was handed down. But the Department of Basic Education has, of course, responded saying that there are a number of aspects in that judgment that they do not concur with, that they won't leave unchallenged. For example, that the court didn't consider this whole notion around the credibility, fairness and the integrity of the 2020 exam because of what Umalusi had indicated. So obviously, they cannot, and the country cannot afford to live with a situation whereby the integrity of the entire 2020 class is in question.
Yeah, but I mean, the interesting thing here, and the Department of Basic Education needs to listen to these things carefully, is that the judges are saying once you take a matter to court, you have to put resounding information in front of the judge to convince people, or in the judge of the law, that you've got enough information to back up the recommendations that you're making. And what the courts have said, that there is simply not enough information to make a decision for a national rewrite. And what we're proposing, or rather affirming, even asserting, demanding, we must use the words that we mean. That Umalusi works as if they are an institution that is inside our own government and in our own country. Context is important for these kinds of decisions. And so we are also concerned that the judge didn't talk too much around the implications should Umalusi in the long run, post-investigations, deem the certificate sort of unfair, and without integrity and or illegitimate, because that does affect the future of learners in matric this year. And so what we're proposing is that the part of the process issue inside this court case was around the fact that the decision to then go for a national rewrite felt unilateral, only made by Umalusi. And this institution, by sort of protocols and procedures and the regulations that govern the work of the Department of Basic Education together with this body, is that they're meant to work together with the DG to make this kind of decision and come to this kind of recommendation. And it seems in what people, the two parties or three parties rather, had put to the courts during this court proceeding is that the DG had not, in fact, not been consulted. This decision was made post the CEM. These are all of our MECs of education of different provinces in conversation with the Department of Basic Education, the minister, and then Umalusi making this sort of unilateral decision. And what we keep saying to folks, and this is what learners have been saying to us, is that the communications that comes out of institutions like Umalusi and the Department of Education is sometimes insufficient. It doesn't reach where it needs to reach, in particular poor and working class communities. Because instead of this feeling like something that is designed to protect learners in the integrity of their qualification, it felt like punishment. And this is why the response was so passive aggressive, and there's a lot of anxiety from learners in our school communities. And so we really do need to ship our ship up in the next year if we intend to take learners back into a school environment that is going to allow them to feel supported for exams, for teaching and learning in general. The last point that we really want to call for is that at the end of this investigation, whatever it's going to look like for the next couple of weeks or months, the Department of Basic Education, together with Umalusi, must make that report public. It's also just a different thing to have arguments and conversations like these about something that we haven't had sight of. And that kind of paternalistic relationship that government has to people needs to stop somewhere.
And I see you also indicated, that you welcome the signing of performance agreements between the president and, of course, ministers. But this isn't something new. President Zuma, for example, also signed these performance agreements. How do you suppose it's going to be different this time around?
Yeah, I mean, look, similar to how we understand and hold our constitution, similar to the ways that these kind of court judgments and rulings can be in favor of working class and poor and marginalized people. The proof is in the pudding. What do you do with these kinds of papers? And South Africa's famous for these kinds of progressive on paper issues. And so what we have been saying is that as long as the issues that learners last year in June had taken outside the Department of Basic Education in their own mock KPI, for Angie Motshekga are tabled inside this KPM, it will be good enough for us to start monitoring that the Department of Basic Education, the ministry, is doing what is actually needed on the ground. The last thing there is that the reason we had to do this mock trial and ask for Cyril to give us public signed performance contracts is because this is Angie Motshega's third term in this role as the Minister of Basic Education, but we still have plain pit latrines as the only source of sanitation in schools in the rural provinces. We still have issues. I mean, and this became very clear during this COVID reality, that a lot of schools have issues around infrastructure that affect their abilities to be able to learn in safe environments. So learners are saying we can't go back to school. Schools aren't ready because we don't have enough classrooms. We don't have enough furniture. We don't have water. These are basic necessities. We shouldn't be having this conversation in 2020. And so, and it starts feeling like government itself, included, and Treasury are defunding education over the next period. We've tracked trends that say, look, the per learner allocation to spending from government on learners has decreased gradually over the last 10 years. And with the austerity and the supplementary budget that's kicked in as well, has taken over 7 billion rand away from the education system. So the kinds of conditions that exist right now are going to worsen in the next period. And this is a social good, a critical crux of being able to build a vibrant and robust democracy. So if learners can't feel that they are prioritized in education, basic education in particular, isn't prioritized in this country, then we've got a huge problem. So post signing this contract, we're going to be chasing Cyril and his government. We're going to be chasing Angie Motshega because young people need to feel legitimized and held by the Constitution today.
Well, unfortunately, we have to leave it there for today, Noncedo. But we've certainly noted your concerns as equal education, and no doubt we'll talk more about these developments as the department, of course, sets out to challenge the Gauteng High Court's decision for the learners, the matric learners of 2020, not to rewrite the matric exam, the maths paper 2 and physical science paper 2, as per the department's decision. But the department saying they cannot leave this unchallenged because there are questions of credibility relating to these exams. So an interesting one, a developing one, but nothing happening in terms of a rewrite this week.
Very unfortunate. All right, let's get into